Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my weekly show where my guest and I dive into my obscenely large watch list, random as it can be. And we get a film, and whatever it's going to be, we're going to talk about it. And joining me is now one of my frequent collaborators, filmmaker Carl Kelsch. Thank you so much for coming on.
Shane, it's really good to be here.
Absolutely. And this is a different vibe than maybe our last film we talked about for sure, but this is quite the wholesome film that we're going to be talking about today, and that is 1997's The Castle. But before we dive in, Carl, where can people check out some of your work?
Shane, I think most people could see some of my films and articles I've written, including interviews with filmmakers like Julia Ducournau, who has Alpha coming out soon, uh,
Nice.
at carlkelsch.com, and that's Carl with a C, last name Kelsch.
Awesome. And that will be in the description, so you got a nice quick link to get there. But that's exciting because not gonna lie, I got to watch Alpha like in November because I got it as part of my Neon box for consideration for all their 2025 films. But then Alpha got like punted to March, April. So it's very interesting. And it'll be interesting to see how people react to now this third big film that she has coming out. Because 10 was it was something I witnessed multiple people, specifically people in their 70s and 80s, walk out of that film in the theater.
I believe
Honestly, that
it.
was one of the most wild movie going experiences I ever had. And I'm sure those senior citizens as well would probably why they left. But very different type of film that we're talking about today, which is indeed The Castle. And this is a 1997 Australian comedy, and a working class family from Melbourne, Australia fights City Hall after being told they must vacate their beloved family home to allow for infrastructural expansion. Ah, eminent domain. Popping up in this Australian comedy, and this was released April 10th, 1997. It's just a lean 84-minute film. This was made for 750,000 Australian dollars and made 11 million Australian dollars. So this was a nice little hit, and I would be remiss if I did not say it made $11 million dues. As my wife made that comment after I told her how much money was made. This is directed by Rob Sitch, made up of writers and performers from The Late Show and The D Generation. So this was a group of comedic writers that all came together from these previous projects. A man's home is his castle, and that is the saying that lends itself to this uh to the title of this film. This was shot in 11 days.
I read that
Supposedly,
today. Oh my God, that's crazy.
so supposedly the whole entire film was done in less than a month. From
Wow,
right from
wow.
They wrote the film in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, and then they filmed it and put it through post. I'm
Hmm.
like, that's efficiency
Yeah.
for sure. Absolutely wild. And at the end of the day, it worked because this is considered one of the greatest Australian films of all time, which throwing the castle up there with Gallipoli and Mad Max. And you're just like, and then the castle,
Yeah.
which is a fun time. But yes, so Carl, what are your general thoughts on the castle?
Well, I want to give you the context that I remember when
Okay.
this movie came out in the theater. I was probably a sophomore at NYU. I feel like I remember it maybe playing at the Angelica, and at the
Mhm.
time, Miramax was like A24. You watched whatever they put out. So when they had their
Yeah.
stamp on this, it just automatically entered your radar. But I don't think I know now after watching it that I hadn't seen it back then. Um, it was simpler and more straightforward. It almost felt less like the edginess of a lot of Sundance hits around that time that Miramax would have put their stamp on. It was simpler, quainter, but it really tapped. what I realize is my personal love for a lot of other Australian classics like Muriel's Wedding and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And those films invite you, like this one, to take it in the context of the culture it is. And I really felt that the castle, it made me laugh, and it uh, struck a really fun tone with making a little bit fun of the characters for their, simple minded outlook on life, and then gets really sneaks up on you by getting into the heart of their values and principles that I just shockingly found I really related to the way the way the dad thought in certain extents to certain extents when it comes
Mhm.
to when you feel like you're being victimized, how you can kind of go into like kill mode, but even kill mode for me and him is like a very gentle, logical attack mode.
Which this film is so sincere and so charming. I had such a blast for 84 minutes because, like, that's the thing. This is a lean movie. It's not long. You get dropped into this family, and it's Stephen Curry who plays Dale, who does all the voiceover. And he just lovingly talking about his family, like a
Mhm.
decent chunk of this movie. It's just such a charming experience. His voiceover really works. Michael Keaton, who plays the dad, which I joked before we started recording that they should have a special Australian Academy Award for Best Mustache,
Mhm.
goes to Michael Keaton for this movie as Daryl the dad, which that's the thing too, because I would have expected this to go like full blown like Clark Griswold, like been a little
Right.
crazy because he's pushed to some of his limits, but like he's so like kind of nice about it throughout the whole thing. And like obviously he's upset and they want to keep their family home. They have this modest home. It's their home. I love like he is one of the most charming characters I've seen in a movie. Like anything his wife cooks, he's just like, wow, this was the most amazing dinner. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it's just one of the nicest things just watching. Like I could just watch I would be shocked if they didn't try to turn this into a sitcom or if this spun off into one because this would have easily been a sitcom that I would have wanted to watch.
Yeah.
Um, where it's so wholesome and you know they're wholesome, but life happens. And
Yeah.
like an eminent domain situation happens, they want to take their home away and they still have to deal with it. And I think this navigates that the, you know, the bureaucracy of a lot of that kind of stuff in a fun, charming kind of way. And it's very interesting because I've watched a few 90s Australian films recently because for one of my other podcasts on here, my wife and I just watched Muriel's Wedding and Cosi. So
Oh,
a
yeah. I remember that.
couple of Tony Collette and Rachel Griffiths early films from that era. And there's a much darker edge with a lot of the Australian comedies I've seen. Because like I love Muriel's Wedding, there's some dark stuff. Dark stuff happens in that. But this kind of kept it like, yes, this is a challenging situation, but we're going to be ourselves about it and we're going to figure this out. And I bought into the family, and I think that's the key to this movie.
Yeah, I would say, PJ Helgen came to NYU and presented Burial's Wedding, so I have a very strong memory of that. But now I'm realizing, yeah, they really kind of came out concurrently, and it makes me feel that the castle, like you said, coming out of some sketch TV comic roots,
Hmm.
has a more kind of formal stage play sense of satire, and I
Yep.
think it probably even has more in common with things like in America, King of the Hill, or like
Yeah.
comfort watch shows like Schitt's Creek and Abbott Elementary, where there's a genteelness to the comedy
Hmm.
that it's just more about the dissonance between what people are saying and what you're seeing, or vice versa, and it's presented in a much more it's directed in a much more straightforward way that I thought was less flashy, and again shot in 11 days, and you realize that at the heart of it, I think they knew their story was great, and the writing would carry it, and that it wasn't meant to be a character study, or go super deep into the characters at times.
Well, absolutely. And I love your comparison to King of the Hill because that's one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. And it's Mike Judge, you know, playfully looking at some aspects of American culture in certain places, like in Texas and stuff. But he loves his characters. And you feel that love in the characters. And it never talks down about them. And I got that vibe from this film. It's just like, yeah, some of this stuff's a little silly. Maybe they're a little too like lighthearted about stuff, but like you love the characters and you can feel that Sitch and all the writers love these characters too. And
Hmm.
there's a charm to it. And yeah, to the point where like did this feel more like I was watching a elongated sitcom episode than probably like film. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of flair to it, but if you could get a movie done in 11 days, write it in less than 2 weeks and then film it and get it all together in less than 11 days, I'm like, you did something right. And it turned out this engaging and fun. So that's the approach that they had. And I think they leaned on that actors would understand their characters well. And I think Caton for sure just has this full understanding who Daryl Kerrigan is. And
Hmm.
I love this whole cast and like this family feels so authentic together. And there's some fun twists and turns in terms of like they hope to remain hopeful and something will work out for them. And they wind up getting help from this consul who
Hmm.
winds up helping them with their legal situation. But it's one of those types of things where it's like, this is a extremely relatable type of comedy. Because even if your family's not quite like this family, I think everybody's family or group of people they surround themselves with have their own special sense of humor and their own little chemistry and just community about themselves. And it's really charming watching this family unit pulled
Yeah,
together during this tough time.
yeah. I feel like a lot of the humor in the 90s was, especially in America, was based kind of around a very dark, cynical thing. Even a lot of the
Mhm.
sketch comedy, like things like The Stiller Show or
Yep.
um, Mr. Show and things like that. I felt like this uh, clearly sets up that the story really is about this family's naivete and that they're the underdogs and that it's not going to try to uncover anything dark about the family. It's placing them as the underdogs. And a lot of people said that that is where the Australian spirit of this film is really contained, and the fact that the country, the continent itself, often is in this underdog um, place, even in its uh, relation to the British Empire, and just um, the culture itself, just kind of being this, uh, having this sense of pride that is really comes through with the this family. They're very proud of themselves, and it sets up very early on that their family. The biggest thing they boast is that their daughter went to beauty school, and they have a son. It's the most wholesome family with a son in prison. Let's just put it that way. Um,
Yes.
and they have their holiday home that he built from a kit, and they sing a song when they drive to their holiday home. And I think that the where the movie started to really pop for me was this. There's a sense of the father being really naive about the situation, and the lawyer, the incompetent lawyer that he hires, who didn't get his son out of a prison sentence, but tried really hard. So you should go for this. The lawyer who even tells him this is over my head. It was giving me My Cousin Vinny vibes, which is another film that
Yep.
I kind of feel like has a tonal spiritual kin to this, and it really showed the father's naivete isn't built in just in so much cluelessness, but like a really stubborn belief of how things should work fairly, and that since feels like an unfair situation, the law should be able to prove that. And it's the driving heart of when the film really kicked in for me was a scene halfway through where the mother sits down and we're there at the dinner table and she says, "Let me tell you about the story where I met your dad." It's such a simple story, and the mom has been a very just like typical like mom character has never had any more than two lines at a time up until this point, and she tells the story that she was on a date at the Greyhound tracks when uh, the man who she ended up marrying approaches her, Daryl, and when she says that she's on a date, he quickly begs off. He says he's gonna leave and doesn't want to step in on that, and he's so sweet about it that his principles and sincerity, even though he just asked her out and clearly wanted to date her, won her over. That as soon as she had the chance, she reconnected with him, and it really seems to be the scene that's the key to appreciating um, another side, the dopiness of his character and the
Mhm.
stubbornness, and a little bit of sometimes the cluelessness. It shows that it's rooted in something that the film almost waits to reveal. How it
Yeah,
really, really sees this character and what he represents.
absolutely. So, few points there. This is like a classic underdog kind of story. They feel like an underdog in this overwhelming situation, and it's also very interesting. Like Australia is not exactly like if you think about the UK and the Greater British Empire and everything is like Australia, I feel like a lot of the times is like the butt of the joke of things. And like this has that kind of vibe where it's just like, hey, we're extremely proud of who we are. We're going to live by that. And I the moments where the one son went to go see his brother in prison and their interactions of like, yep, it is one
How's
back and
mom?
forth with each
How's
other. Hilarious gag. And I do love that story that the mother tells because that is the dad in a
mm-hmm.
nutshell and helps us understand that, hey, I have these principles I live by. I'm going to be stubborn about it and I'm going to continue to live by them. And he's not worried about bending to what society's expectations are. He truly believes that if you stay true to yourself and to your principles, life will figure it out. And, you know, it's a little naive. Life's not always going to be that way. Like, which also, like, the fact that they indeed hired a lawyer after it's like, I tried real hard to get your son out of prison. And just like, well, he tried. Let's
Yeah.
get him back. It's like, probably not the best situation. But you brought up an interesting greater context because I look at the poster on IMDb and it says this year's Full Monty. And which is very interesting because Full Monty was a very different vibe than I feel like a lot of 90s movies were. Because like, yeah, the 90s were a very like snarky, cynical time. Things like Scream, this meta commentary on horror movies and making fun of them, but having fun with it. But like Full Monty was nominated for Best Picture, and it was about a group of working class guys who, you know, put on a strip show. It's like, how in the world this movie becomes such a big thing, but it's wholesome. And it's
Yeah.
just, these men being vulnerable and being willing to put themselves out there to support themselves and their family. And obviously there's no stripping or anything like that in this movie, but it's still one of those types of things where it's like it's about this man who's willing to put himself out there to do right by his family. And I love that you brought up My Cousin Vinny because the 90s felt like it was either you're super cynical and snarky and all of these things. And then there's a string of a lot of it's in sitcoms on TV because, I watch a lot of Full House. That's like the most wholesome thing you're going to
Right.
find, to be perfectly honest. Or like My Cousin Vinny, Full Monty, The Castle. These are movies that don't have obviously, I think My Cousin Vinny has a little bit higher stakes because death penalties on the line here.
Yeah.
Like they're relatively low stakes fun movies that are just about an underdog, figuring it out, and that's what's so charming about this film. This doesn't have to have like these world changing things, and like around the same time, you had things like Titanic and Armageddon and these big disaster movies and stuff like that. And we're like, no, it's just about a family who wants to keep their house. and it doesn't need much more than that. At the end of the day, this is a really charming film. I laughed a lot honestly watching this
I
movie,
did too.
and I had such a good time. But Carl, was there anything else that you wanted to add about it?
Oh, we didn't mention that Eric Bana is in here. He was a comedian at the time, and I guess I looked up that he did have a recurring kind of TV show persona. He's a fun character, and again, it's just like it's like a super subtle kind of humor. What is his name?
Han.
Connor. Yes, what Con is his comedic role in the family is like just to sort of be this just this outside force that they all sort of like they're like so curious and interested in. He's super cool, but he's affirms like their family just by like loving their daughter and like wanting to spend
Mhm.
time with them like a really dutiful son-in-law. I thought that was a nice another reason to see this movie. The last thing I want to say about this movie is that it breaks some big rules with this ending of how does he fight to get his house. It goes against all the rules that he's very passive and almost really doesn't do anything in the last 20 minutes very directly as a
Mhm.
main character who's trying to fight for his house. It's all about a conversation he has in passing when he's at the courtroom where he doesn't want for anything. He's just being himself that endears the person who turns out to be his biggest advocate and ends up helping. And so I do think by, maybe a different set of people with bigger budget would have been challenged to rewrite that. But I think some of the movie's charm is that it gets at its themes through weird connections like that are counterintuitive, don't make it into a lot of films because they're kind of low stakes and
Mhm.
low low suspense. But I found it incredibly charming and beautiful that the very fact that he just simply states what's happening to his family in the right room with the right person when he doesn't think it means anything to anybody,
Mhm.
and he's super good listener to this other person and complimentary to this person when he's talking about his proudness of his son. We have this dad who's proud of his son who's in prison. He's as proud of his idea man second son. He's as proud of the youngest son who doesn't seem to have any particular thing going for him other than to be narrating the story for
Mhm.
us. Um, that little moment ends up triggering, the final beats of the thing. It's both. I want to note that it's very unusual in screenwriting terms, but it is really spot on in terms of theme. And I think because they paid attention to the themes and the emotions they want you to feel in this movie, it overcomes every single limitation with budget or flash or all those things.
So first, I had a oh my god moment when Eric Bana showed up on
Yeah.
screen, and my wife was like, and I'm like, it's Eric Bana. It's Hulk, I guess.
Yeah.
I was trying to think like what he obviously had a bit of a moment. He was in Ang Lee Hulk movie. He was in Troy because he was Hector, right? I'm pretty sure. There's a lot of characters in that movie.
It was Munich,
And yeah,
Spielberg.
yes, Munich, and then he was even one of the shark Australian sharks in Finding Nemo, which was probably the thing that my wife actually picked up on the most out of all those ones that I read off. But I love this movie being true to itself because at the end of the day, they got help because he was a good person and he was a genuine person. And, you know, especially in the 90s, that is such a not cynical way of wrapping up this movie. And I think it works for it. And, you could show it to more cynical people. I'm like, what a cop out. But, like, here's the thing. And I'll tell my little secret here of how I build relationships at work. I'm friendly, I'm willing to help, and people notice that. You would be surprised that if you're a decent person to other people, they might be willing to be a decent person to you back. And in
Mm.
2026, I feel like this was a really nice thing to watch. To be perfectly honest. And because like I'm the type of person like I'm a relationship builder. And like I work with people, I work with a lot of people. And if you want to build relationships with people, just show that you care. And it's not going to work on everybody, but that works on a lot of people. So I I co-sign this lovely little message at the end of this movie that if you're a decent enough person, somebody might notice and it might pay off for you. And the key thing is not doing it because you're hoping to get it paid off. Because
Mm,
in the most genuine way, Daryl is not doing this hoping to get anything out of it. If you just are a good person, sometimes life will help you out.
mm.
And that's a lovely little message that they have at the end of this film for a lovely little film.
Yeah, I think Australians wear this film as like saying, if you respect us, you're gonna love us,
Mhm.
and we're gonna
Absolutely.
treat you so well.
Well, and that's a thing too, because I think that's not exactly an American thing in a lot of places, which I will say, growing up in New Jersey, right across from Philly, people rag on Philly folk a lot. But here's the
Mm,
thing: if you respect the Philly folk, they will die for you.
yeah, I
Will
believe
have
it.
your back, and they're the type of people you want to have your back.
Mhm.
Um, it's that interesting. Oh, this will be the last thing because it's a bit of a tangent, but that quadrant that I've seen them cut up the United States in, looks mean, but is actually nice, is the Northeast. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, honestly, yeah. Are Philly folk, Jersey folk, New York folk a little abrasive? Maybe. Yeah. Like, they'll go to bat for you. If you are good to them, they'll be good to you. It's not that fake nice. It's like
Mhm.
the Southeast. It was like acts nice, but is actually really mean. I'm like, yeah, I'd prefer to be like, I would prefer to be around a bunch of abrasive people who are actually willing to help out. So,
Yeah,
and maybe that's just because I'm used to that. So there
yeah.
you go. But Carl, thank you as always for coming on and chatting movies with me.
Absolutely, Shane. Thanks again. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and this is a really charming film. So if you're worried about movies being too long, as I just watched two of the Best Picture nominees that were combined 5 hours and 10 minutes, this is an hour and 25 minutes of your life. So dive in and have a good time. But thank all of you for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What's your favorite Australian film, and why is it Mad Max? Spoiling, but mine is obviously. And make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. The SPDM Crew Podcasting Network is ever expanding. So if you are looking for some podcasts, we have all different types of podcasts here, all different types of interests, a lot of movie ones. So if you love movies, there's plenty of that. And if you want to join the crew as a guest on a show just like this one specifically, because this is the one we have a lot of guests on, or if you want to start your own podcast and have an idea, make sure to reach out to us on our website. If you like our logo, check out High Flyer Creative for all your digital marketing needs. But most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network.